Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my criminal neighbor stole a large portion of my land because he got connections to the local government. I made him deeply regret what he did to me. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. And the first one starts like this. Before I talk about him stealing my land, I just want to tell you how much I despise my neighbor. I don't know about other countries, but here in my part of Indonesia, if you have connections, then you can get away with things that other people can't. My neighbor works for the area in a government job dealing with properties. This can range from figuring out where the lines of properties are to what is allowed and not when people want to do things or alter their property. He is so well connected within that part that he is smug about the fact that he can do anything he wants with his property. I'm pretty sure he does not even file for the inspections or claims before doing something because he knows he can get away with it. One thing that drives me crazy is that I know for a fact whenever I put in a request for something, he sees it and makes sure that it gets rejected. It makes no difference if the thing I am asking the town to do is perfectly legal. If it gets rejected by that office, it means I cannot do it. This means that my property over time has gotten kind of shabby looking with an old fence I cannot get permission to redo and partially dead trees I want to get removed. Of course, my neighbor loves this because the worse my property looks, the better his does. This story is about when he tried to push things a little bit too far though. At some point my neighbor decided that he needed more land, so he was just going to take mine and thought he could get away with it. A fence started to be built very deep into my land, with my neighbor claiming and having the approved paperwork. It had him labeled as the owner for that part of the land, so he was able to get away with doing this no matter what I told the people who were working on it. When I called the office that does property about it, they just said they would look into it. Of course, neighbor was able to intercept that message and make sure nothing got done. I have seen plenty of stories of people pushing property lines to steal some land, but what he did continued to get worse. I found one day my own house was getting padlocks installed and he had the police outside to evict me. He had forged papers that claimed he owned the property and was telling a story about how I was the person that used to live there and did not want to leave. I was forced out of my own home, and since he was well connected and I was not, they did not want to listen to a word I had to say. I could only watch as my neighbor stole my house along with the rest of my property. The entire time he still had that smug look on his face, thinking that he had won. At that point, I did not care how well connected he was. I was not going to let him get away with stealing my property and home. I knew that going to that office was not going to solve anything, so I went above them to the property office that the town one basically answers to. This way, the people working there did not really know the neighbor, and I had a chance of getting somebody to listen to me. It took a couple of tries and me being redirected, but I was finally able to speak to somebody that was willing to take my side of the story. Eventually, the easiest way to do this was to stop trying to go through the people that deal with property and instead deal with the housing sector. There was some overlap, but neighbor was much less well known there, and after 2 weeks of running around and telling my story to people, it seemed like I found the right person. It turns out that while him stealing my property was something that would have been hard to get him for, the house was another thing entirely. He pushed it just a little too far with that, and it would end up being the thing that shot him in the foot. I was advised to sue him mainly for the forged documents that proved the house was mine, and then after that I could put in for a request for somebody to check the property line that worked in a different town to avoid any kind of bias. Believe me though when I tell you that this was not a quick process by any means. For the point of this story not going on forever, I'm just going to jump to what happened when we finally got to go to court over the ownership of the house. By that point, I was totally exhausted and didn't know if I could handle my neighbor winning again. Luckily, the house matter was as cut and dry as my lawyer told me it was. The fact that there was no proof my house was ever for sale, no bank info about it, no payment to me for it, etc., going under his paperwork with a fine-tooth comb also showed some things that were not consistent with a real deed. Due to stealing my house, the fact of him stealing some of my land was now brought up to question, and suddenly his connections did not seem to be helping him at all. The ruling that day was that he was going to have to pay me a huge fine for the time that he was illegally on my land and pay for the housing costs I piled up while I had no place to live and was jumping from cheap motel to cheap motel. In regards to the land, an adjuster was sent out that was from a town away and had no clue who the neighbor was, so he could not have bias in his favor. And of course, it showed that the property he claimed was his was actually mine as well. He was going to have to pay to remove the fence that he built, piling up his fines even more. With all the money that he owed, he actually had to sell off some of his land, which I decided to buy up and be able to extend and essentially take some of his land in revenge. The best part though is what happened because of the forged documents. Like I said before, he was working in a government position, which meant he had certain guidelines in order to get and keep that job. One of which is of course the fact that he could not be arrested for a crime or he would lose his job. The forged documents were considered a crime, and while he did not end up going to jail, he was still prosecuted and found guilty for it. At the end of it all, I ended up with a sum of money, more property than I started with, and my well-connected neighbor had lost his job. I like to think that it was years of karma all finally catching up with him at the same time. With all the victories I had gotten, nothing was sweeter than finally seeing that smug grin wiped clean off of his face. I don't think he will ever be able to even make that face again after what he went through trying to steal my house. I have a feeling I will see the rest of his property up for sale really soon. And yeah guys, I'm curious, if your neighbor tried to steal your property with fake documents, what would you have done? I think OP definitely did the right thing here, but personally for me it would have definitely been a little bit scary seeing that the neighbor was so well connected and he thought he was invincible. Anyway, let's continue with the next story. This one is titled The Neighbor Karen from Hell. For background, my family moved to a quiet suburban town years ago to get away from the busy city we used to live in. Everyone in our neighborhood is either extroverted and loves socializing or quiet and keeps to themselves. My family fits the keeps to themselves category. We don't talk to our neighbors except for the few times a year that we would say hi to each other. Now, for this story, my parents have a next-door neighbor that has been there longer than my family has, and they never used to have problems until one day the lady of the house, let's call her Karen, just started having issues. Now, we don't know what caused the switch from calm to Karen, but we think it was due to my brother having his friends park outside of our houses and them accidentally blocking her mailbox at night one time. Just a theory, but that's all we have. Karen, since the day she snapped, has caused nothing but arguments between her and my family, countless times calling the cops on us, for example, like blocking her mailbox on Sundays, where the cars would not even be close to her mailbox at all. And did I mention that it was Sunday? Like, we have told her that mail doesn't come on Sunday, and that even if it did, we were not blocking it to the point that the mailman could not give her the mail. When the cops would show up, they would tell her to leave us alone and that the cars were in fact not blocking her mailbox and to stop calling about stuff that can be handled neighborly. The cops even warned her that if she called about an issue like the ones she called in the past, that they will give her a ticket. So since she could not call the cops on us anymore, her next move was to park her son's car, who at the time was freeloading off of them, all the time in that specific spot so that we couldn't. Not a big deal, just a bit annoying that she couldn't be civil. So for this story, let me tell you who was all there. It was my brother, my bro, my mom, my best friend who I will call Shane, Karen and myself. So the day in question was during the summer. My brother Shane and myself were outside playing catch with a baseball in the street in front of our houses. Now, knowing that Karen could go off at any moment, we made sure to space ourselves away from the houses and her car that was parked on the street. As we were throwing the ball back and forth, my friend threw it a little short and it ended up hitting the ground and rolling towards Karen's car. Now, the ball was not rolling fast, and when it got to her car, it hit the rubber of her back driver's side tire. I then told Shane and my brother that we should probably take this game of catch to the park so that we don't accidentally hit her car and cause damage, so that's what we did, and we were there for at least an hour. As we were heading back, we see Karen standing in front of her house looking back and forth frantically. We thought nothing of it and just moved on. She then stops us and starts yelling. Karen, you boys are in big trouble. Bro, what are you talking about? Karen, don't you, what are you talking about to me? You know what you have done. Me, nope. What did we do? Karen gives off a big huff and says, you damaged my car with that baseball you have. Bro, what are you talking about? We didn't do anything. Yes, you did. I have it all on video of you hitting my car with the ball. Me, you mean when the ball rolled and hit your tire? No. Karen then went next to her car and pointed at a dent that was on the passenger side of the car. Again, the ball rolled and hit her tire on the driver's side. Me, that was definitely not caused by us, Karen. Yes, it was, and I have it all on video. The cops will love this. Me, let us see the video you have, Karen. No, you will delete it from my phone. Bro, you know what? I'm done hearing this. Shane, go get our mom out. Shane runs into my house as Karen keeps saying that the cops will force us to pay a big fine. She has this nasty grin on her face. My brother and I are just sitting there annoyed because we know she doesn't have any video. My mom rushes out like a bat out of hell and starts digging into Karen. Mom, what the F do you want now, Karen? Karen, I have video of your kids damaging my car and I want you to pay for it. Mom, boys, what happened? So I tell my mom what happened, how the ball rolled into her tire, how we went to the park so we wouldn't cause any more damages to her car, and how Karen says we caused this dent on her car and how she won't even show us the video that she apparently has. So my mom said, okay Karen, if my sons and their friend did cause this, then let me see the video. I will let you hold the phone the whole time while I have my hands behind my back so you won't feel like I'm going to take your phone. Karen, no, your sons will delete it, I know it. My brother and I, no we won't. Mom, so come on Karen, show us. Karen, I will never do that. Just pay for the fixes now and I won't get the police involved. My mom is fuming now and starts to angrily laugh, which creeps out Karen, and not gonna lie, the rest of us as well. My mom then stops and goes ballistic on her. Mom, you won't show us that video. She does the air quotes gesture, condemning my kids and their friends because you don't have one. Now you're trying to blackmail us into fixing your problem. Well, Karen, you obviously don't know who you are messing with. Karen, who are you calling a witch? You obviously cannot look in the mirror and see how horrible you are and how your kids are delinquents. Mom, really? You're going to judge me on how I raised my kids? Like my son here, pointing at my brother, he is going into the military to serve our country, and my other son, pointing at me, is a straight A student and gonna be a scholar. My friend Shane at the time quietly said, and Shane here, who is just a nice guy. My mom then continues, now let's look at your son who has no job, who freeloads off of you and your husband and also beats his wife. So yeah, those look like traits that show he was raised by a good mother. Karen looking shocked, who told you that? Mom, the whole neighborhood knows, Karen, it ain't no secret. Now either you're gonna call the cops on my kids and show them this video, or I will call them and file a claim for harassment. Karen, you won't. You have nothing on me. Mom, try me, Karen. Karen then runs back into her house and my mom guided us back into our house. Now, my mom was not kidding, she did call the cops. We waited for them to show up and we all gave a statement. The cop then goes over to Karen's house and what we can see is her yelling at the police officer who we think was demanding to see the video. And after a minute of shouting, the cop then writes her a ticket and leaves. To leave this post on a good note, I will say Karen has flipped the switch again, has become very nice and she keeps to herself more but does not cause any more issues. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I think I have mentioned this a few episodes ago, I actually have a neighbor like this in my neighborhood. This girl, who seems very nice on the outside, is actually absolutely crazy. To us she's pretty nice and always friendly, but she actually tried to stab her ex-boyfriend and his soon-to-be wife/mother of his baby. So yeah, when she moved away and this whole situation cleared up, I will definitely make a story out of this. It is just too crazy to not tell it. And the next one is titled Perfect Revenge Done Right. About 6 years ago, I was an installer for a water softener company. At first, the job was pretty good. The pay was nice, and while it was an on-call job, the hours were not all that bad. Once you were done with your installs, you went home. You got a week of sick leave and a week of vacation time per year, had a 401 and they covered a decent portion of the insurance. Not the greatest, but at least it was something. Well, fast forward a few years and the owners got more and more greedy, buying very expensive luxury cars and charging them to the company, taking family vacations on the company dime and even taking company money to go gambling with. I know this because I was really good friends with the controller who did their books and taxes. After a while, they took away the vacation and sick time, stopped helping with insurance and stopped matching the 401 because they did not make enough to cover all that and blow the money on the luxury cars, vacations and gambling. Their excuse was that they were a small family company and could not keep doing it, but a few of us knew the truth. Next, they made us stay on call all day, every day, even after the installs were done, so they could ram in last-second installs at all crazy hours. Imagine showing up at a home at 8 p.m. to do a 3-hour install on a school night at a home that is 2 hours away and they have no idea you're even coming because the owners told the salesperson to just lie to them. So you get yelled at, told to leave, get home at 10 p.m. and then have to be back at the office at 7 a.m. just to show back up at the same house again the following day. This happened constantly and it got worse and worse. Then they started purposely cutting hours, so if you got stuck working 2 or 3 13-hour days, you would then only work 3 to 4-hour days the rest of the week, so you got no overtime, while some other unlucky sap got nailed with the time instead, only to get their hours cut the next few days. So on and so forth. A few other installers complained and were basically told, too bad, deal with it. People started quitting and the owners actually just told people to pack their stuff and never come back, the day they turned in their 2-week notices. They were so petty, they made people who really needed the money go without paychecks for 2 weeks and when they were just doing the right thing by giving notice. I then had enough and had the same conversation the others did, and sure enough, after 7 years of busting my ass for them, I was told, "This is how we do things now. We are not changing it just for you, so if you don't like it, find a new job." Well, I immediately started looking and after a few weeks found a good job with a city municipality. I actually used a work truck to show up for the interview in between jobs. I gave 0 notice and just turned all my stuff in that Friday night after I got paid. When they asked me what the hell was going on, I told them, "I took your advice." They said, "Huh? What advice?" I said, "Well, you told me to find a different job, so I did. Oh, and by the way, I showed up at the interview in your work vehicle, so thanks for paying for the gas to get me there." I also returned the truck on about 1/16 of a tank just so they would have to fill it up, and I didn't clean it at all. It was petty, yes, but it made me feel better. And yeah, ripe stars, if you have ever quit an awful job like the one OP had in style, just like he did, then please feel free to share your amazing stories in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit. Thank you so much for watching, I hope to see you again tomorrow.